Right, let's get into this immigration story. I mean, as you know, the PM is coming under increasing pressure, not just to stop the boats, but also to control legal migration. We had that astonishing figure, a record high of 745,000 coming into Britain in the year ending December 2020. It has caused a little bit of a row within the Tory party as to what to do. A lot of right-wingers are calling on the government to do much more. Sir John Hayes, for instance, said that 1.3 million migrants coming into the UK over a period of 2 years is a catastrophe for Britain and requires urgent legislation. The Immigration Minister, Robert Jenrick, was speaking about this in the House of Commons yesterday. This is what he had to say.
Well, I think my plan would have been brought to the House before last Christmas, if I could have done, but let's hope we can bring forward a substantive package of reforms very quickly. I'm working intensively with the Prime Minister and the Home Secretary. We are at one on this issue, and I hope that my honourable friend will not be disappointed.
Robert Jenrick there seemed to be suggesting that Number 10 has been dragging its heels on this issue. He's got a number of suggestions to try and bring that legal migration number down. He wants to change and clump down on the number of dependents coming in on the back of visas, particularly student visas. He also has suggested that the visa route should be closed off or at least more restrictive to cheap foreign workers. There's even been a row between, we think, Suella Braverman and Rishi Sunak over the idea of putting a cap on earnings for those coming in from abroad. Suella Braverman saying that they struck that deal for £40,000 to be the cap, something that's also been advocated by the former Prime Minister Boris Johnson. So look, it's a complicated issue. There's lots of people asking whether we should solve it by actually saying we need less cheap foreign labour in and more homegrown talent. Having said that, of course, there are concerns that if you say to people you can't come in unless you're coming into a job where you earn more than £40,000 a year, that basically rules out people wanting to work in the NHS or in care or in other customer-facing roles where people might not earn £40,000. So I'm going to ask you tonight, are we in danger of shooting ourselves in the foot here by saying that we should restrict foreign labour? At the end of the day, the reason why we have so many migrants is that there are jobs that they're willing to do that seemingly Brits aren't. So get in touch with me, email farage@gbnews.com or tweet #Farage on GB News. Let's bring Richard Bartram into the conversation now. He's an immigration lawyer. Richard, this proposal to, I don't know, put an earnings cap on those coming in of £40,000 has obviously raised alarm on the backbenches, particularly with One Nation Tories. I know Damien Green made the point, the former Deputy Prime Minister, that actually if you put a £40,000 cap, who are you going to get to do care work, to work in restaurants, to do other manual labour? Is it not realistic or not?
I don't think it's realistic. The background is that there is this shortage occupational skills list, and it's called that because these are jobs that are, that we need people to do. That's the bottom line. So we need people to do these jobs. There's a list. Each job has a pay scale on which one might bring someone from abroad. So unless we're going to pay the going rate to persons not from abroad, we are stuck with people from abroad. But it's by no means easy to bring a person from abroad to work in the NHS or anywhere else either. You're quite correct that it's going to knock out pretty much all but senior nurses, junior doctors in their first couple of years. That's just in the NHS. Care homes would be bereft, and
yes. I mean, I noted on care homes, it was interesting. Jenrick is saying that the health and social care visa, which has seen a 135% leap in applications to 144,000, was not working as well as even its proponents would have wished. But his suggestion is that care homes should pay people more, improve conditions, and improve productivity. These are the same care homes that were nearly wiped out by COVID, along with most of their residents. So is it really practical for care homes, or indeed anyone in the health sector, to be paying a care worker 40 grand? It's not, is it?
Well, I'm not alone, I think, with many of your viewers whose parents are somewhat elderly now, in their 70s, etc. And we all know what these care homes cost.
Yes. But they feel like they're cash-strapped because they're trying to provide 24-hour nursing care, all of people's residential costs, all of their food, occupational therapy. I mean, they're struggling, aren't they, even with the money that comes to them from county councils. And, by the way, they now have to add more money to the wage packet because of the increase to the national living wage.
Well, indeed. I don't think there are easy solutions, but we have to go back to what we want. Do we want more nurses? Do we want our elderly cared for? Do we want more doctors? Before we've even started on, do we want more scientists, computer scientists, whatever that speciality might be?
I mean, this shortage list has got quite a list of different people on it. Ballet dancers, specialist plasterers. I mean, it's quite an unusual and eclectic bunch of people we're trying to attract.
I remind myself that, you know, in ancient Rome, Greeks came from Greek to build monuments. British stonemasons trekked around Europe building the great cathedrals.
Glad you mentioned the Greeks. We're going to be discussing the Elgin Marbles later in the show. But look, at the end of the day, you're an immigration lawyer.
Yeah.
These numbers are very, very high. We can talk about Hong Kong and Ukraine and kind of special circumstances that have been witnessed in the last 12 months. However, I mean, is there a sense to which we're a soft touch and we're not in control of our borders and we're letting a lot of people in because it's convenient to the British economy? More tax receipts seem to suggest that the economy is growing, and it's kind of like a political decision that the Tories don't want to own up to.
Well, it's certainly convenient for the economy. I think that's a given. So if we take that as a given that it's good for our economy, let's look at what is the bad about it? What is the problem? Is it integration? Is it housing? Is it lack of resources? These people pay good money for their visas. They pay £600 a year to use the NHS, etc. So if we can accept that it's good for our economy, that we need these people, but there are other problems, let's look at those other problems and try to find a solution.
But how do you integrate 745,000 people a year? I mean, if the government had stuck to its repeated pledges about tens of thousands rather than hundreds of thousands, it's much easier, isn't it, to integrate 100,000 people or 200,000 people a year than close to 1 million?
These are challenges, and each country, European or other, faces them in different ways. One can look at what goes on in America or Switzerland, but we have to find our own path suitable for the UK.
But in your experience professionally, I mean, is it too easy to get into the country, do you think? Well, you know, this Australian points-based system was meant to find the people that we really need, also nurture homegrown talent to do the jobs and fill some of those shortages. I mean, I appreciate we do have actually 1 million job vacancies at the moment, but we've got 300,000 people who could work that aren't and are on benefits. So we've got problems domestically, but are we also just a soft touch when it comes to allowing people in?
Well, I'm going to say no, and I'll explain why. Broadly speaking, one can come to the UK if you've got family here. I think that's both correct and moral, that if I happen to holiday in Greece and I fall in love with a Greek girl, that she should be able to come to the UK.
Should you bring over her grandparents?
That doesn't happen. The immigration rules are but back in the day it did happen. There are a lot of stable doors that have not been bolted in the past, but the current set of immigration rules really closes the door on adult dependent relatives. It really is quite strict now on just spouse and children. The UK resident or national will have to have a minimum income so he can support his family. That increases if you're bringing children. So there's already a fairly high bar. It's not anyone can just bring anyone from abroad. So we have families, and people have families and people get married. And then we have workers, and we've already established that these are workers who we have declared that we need. The UK company applies for something called a sponsorship licence, pays lots of money for it, issues this certificate to the migrant. They then pay various fees and jump through hoops, and they come to a job which we have deemed is necessary, and we have deemed that no one else can fill.
Yeah.
So I really can't see a lot of wriggle room.
But it does feel somewhat, just to finish, Richard, a kind of system and a degree of chaos. I mean, is the Home Office to blame here, because it seems to perhaps not be fit for purpose? Very briefly,
I actually have a great deal of respect from the Home Office. You might be finding that surprising. I've been in immigration law for 25 or more years. I've known a lot of immigration officers, but perhaps some of their historical knowledge is being lost, as in all organisations. Yes. If you ask the guys who are doing enforcement, they'll tell you what's going on. They'll know. They know what's going on.
OK. I mean, Thank you very much for your contribution this evening, Richard Bartram, their immigration lawyer. Actually, I'm going to slightly contradict that a little later in the show, because there is a moment at a select committee, which we're going to show you a little bit later on, which shows that the Home Office might be in a bit of a state of disarray when it comes to tracking down those they haven't granted asylum to and where they actually are.